Okay, so that's the lines of fenders in, and now we can turn up wind, and I've got the sail partly up. Did that at the dock because I had the headwind. It was brilliant. So I got that started, but I need to turn up wind now to get the sail up fully, and we've still got we've got 8 knots on the beam, which is probably about what it is truly. That's the apparent wind, but on the beam it usually reads exactly what it is. So that might not be enough to prevent us from having to motor a bit, but we'll see how it goes. We'll get the sail up anyway. Okay, it's midday and we've got the sail up, so now we're turning on our course and we'll get going. Here we are, seeing the last of the south end of the Baja Peninsula, which is where Cabo San Lucas and San Jose del Cabo are both situated. San Jose right in the middle of the south end of the Baja, and Cabo of course over in the southwest corner, as it were. So all set. We've got a lot of lines to sort out, mind you. The fenders are stowed away, but the dock lines need to be tidied up, and of course all the reef lines and the main halyard are all in a total mess, so they need to be sorted out now. Well, this is a damn nuisance. Doesn't matter which side I try, I cannot get these jammers to release, and so I actually can't release the mainsail, the sheet on the mainsail, the main sheet. So at the moment we're along amidships, and I can't release it to go downwind at all, or anything, about pointing upwind. Which fortunately at the moment we seem to be. Here's the other side, the starboard side. Cannot get it to release. It will not release. Rolling hitch to the rescue to undo an overridden winch line. Thank God for rolling hitches. Well, this has been a bit of a nightmare start to the journey. I was hoping for a nice sail in good wind down, but not being able to move the main sheet is obviously a major problem. Fortunately, we're pretty well dead up, well not dead upwind, but we are close to the wind, close hauled, so that the main being where it is, the main sheet, the boom being where it is actually perfect for that. I have with difficulty managed just to get the second reef in, because I'm seeing around 20 knots of apparent wind on our port side ahead. So yeah, it's reading 19.5, 20.9, 21. Yeah, it's around 20 knots apparent, and we're making good speed, of course. 6.5, around 6 knots, 6.5 knots. I've left the Genoa. I've got a full Genoa out still, which is why we're helping us make our good speed. And as I say, with the mainsail down to 2 reefs, I'm feeling a little bit happier. But no, we've not been very happy with the start of this journey at all. It's been pretty horrible, in fact. Anyway, oh yeah, and I had my line on the winch overriding. I had to get to take tension on that line to undo it on the winch, which was a rolling hitch. Oh wow, where would I be without a rolling hitch? The most useful knot in the world. If you don't know a rolling hitch, you're obviously not a sailor. Anyway, so I've been very, very careful since then to make sure that I haven't had the line overriding again. The lead isn't quite right, and that's why it happened. And I was hearing the groaning. I should have stopped and had a look, but I just thought it was difficult to get in, and no more than that. So yeah, so then I had to get the rolling hitch into play. What else to report? Yeah, I mean, part of the nightmare actually is that down below the instruments are telling me nothing's happening. There's no heading on the AIS instrument, whether it is clearly, at least now I'm getting the GPS, because I had a message at one point, no satellite, which is obviously very bad news. Got 24 knots apparent here now. I might go down to a third reef. Anyway, we're making 6 knots. I think we'll do it for the moment. Certainly for night time, I'm going to go down to third reef if this wind is still up. yeah, part of the nightmare is that my instruments are totally useless down below. That I'm seeing everything in the cockpit. Yeah, thank goodness. I'm seeing the wind. I'm seeing speed over the ground, 7 knots at the moment, which is nice, 6.5 to 7. And the autopilot up here is telling me it's behaving. Well, we seem to be keeping a course. So if that's working, then fine. But down below, I'm seeing on the autopilot control head down there, I'm seeing no pilot. And that was I nearly turned back thinking I'd have to get things sorted out. So yeah, so things are not really going terribly well at the moment, but well enough that I feel I can continue on. I mean, if necessary, I'll just have to heave to and wait for the wind to die down and motor, but hopefully we can keep sailing. Anyway, we'll see. Not terribly happy at the moment, but that's life. There we go. Bye for now. Well, we're still going fine. It's what is it, 2:20 in the afternoon, and it's definitely time that I started clearing up the lines a little bit. They're a complete mess on the cockpit floor here, so that's what I'm about to do now. We're making 6.5 knots, 22 knots of apparent wind, fine on the port bow, so we're close hauled, and that seems to be working fine. Okay, so on with some clearing up. Well, it's 3:15, and I've reduced the Jeanne a little bit down to, theoretically, it's reef 2, whatever that is. Anyway, it's helped us. We're still healing a lot, and the seas are pretty rough, but at least I think we're a little bit more in control. The sun is shining a little bit. There's a bit of blue sky, quite a lot of white cloud, and I just had a look at the predicted wind forecast, which of course is that things will be easing as time goes on, and the worst is hopefully behind us. The slight problem that I was a bit worried about was that we were going off course rather, and I needed to bring us more on course, which luckily with this autopilot up in the cockpit working, I was able to do. So we've got the wind on the beam at the moment, which is obviously going to cause us to heel more, especially in not being able to ease the main sheet and get the boom out a little bit. That makes us heel more. We've got 20 knots of apparent wind, sometimes gusting up to 22, 23, 4. But it's mostly around, up and down around 20, well, 19, 20, 22, I'm seeing 21, yeah, so it's more like 20 to 22 on average. Speed over the ground is now back to a good 6 knots or so, or more, so I think, we're doing okay. Another problem that I just realised, I suddenly got a strong smell of the lovely food that I'd cooked this morning ready, and I'd forgotten to secure it, and it's ended up on the floor, so I've got to go and sort that out. Oh dear. Anyway, that's my job now. I've got to get down. Here we have the end of the sunset. Missed the actual sunset itself, but I think with the cloud on the horizon you probably wouldn't have seen anything anyway. And it's still pretty rough. The seas are a good 3 meters. We're getting thrown around quite a bit. The wind is still consistently heading up towards 20 knots or so. It's swung around slightly east of north I think now, rather than in the due north. And I've cleared up my mess of my meal down below. Hopefully it's still edible. It's actually quite chilly, and I'm looking forward to the wind dying down a bit and the seas lying down a bit. It'll be nice because we are really moving about a lot here. Fortunately, that autopilot is behaving with the cockpit control there. Thank goodness for that. Otherwise, things would have been really difficult. I would have had to turn back and sort it out. moving around quite a lot in the seas. Have to be very careful, holding on tightly. It's always a thing, when the wind gets up, the seas get up with it. Two to go together. And these seas are quite close. Good 2 to 3 meters. So what's that, getting on to 10 feet, some of them. And certainly moving us around a lot. So as the light fades and darkness comes on, this is the view out of the cockpit window here, looking forward. We're making around 6 knots and the wind is actually more from the slightly west of north. I said east of north, but west of north, and it's still 18 to 20 knots. The wind generator is going around really nicely with all this wind, putting in some power into the batteries. Always nice to see. Well, it's a beautiful night out there. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. The winds have calmed down a little bit, although the seas are still pretty rough and throwing us around. I'm seeing about 17, 18 knots of wind, and it has also shifted a bit more towards the north from the northeast. Otherwise, not much to report really, but we're making, of course, with the lesser wind, lighter wind, we're making nearer 5.5 knots most of the time than the 6.5 that we were seeing earlier. But still pleasant. The instruments here, you can see, still not working properly. No change there. I forgot to mention that there's absolutely no moon, and that's partly why, of course, these stars are so bright. Absolutely beautiful. Orion is almost lying on his left-hand side near the horizon, nearly horizontally, not quite. And yeah, always looked funny to see him like that. Well, it's nearly 6:30 on Friday morning, and we're getting a lot of, getting very close to dawn, quite obviously. Quite bright in the sky there. Tiny, thin crescent moon high above. Very beautiful. And the wind has died back quite a bit. We're now down to about 14 knots current from about the port quarter, and we're making, I've just let out the rest of the Genoa again, we're back to a full Genoa, and we're making around 6 knots. So the wind is probably not gone that far down, because if you add in the 6 knots of boat speed to the 10 or 12 that I'm seeing current wind now, you get 18. So it's not quite 18, but it's getting on that way. So maybe 16 knots of wind. But it has come down obviously from the 22 we were getting yesterday. Okay, so that's the situation at the moment. We're still well on our path towards Banderas Bay. I've just adjusted the autopilot slightly to keep us well on track, very little needed. And the seas are still well up, still sometimes throwing us around quite a bit. Here we are showing, we're not quite halfway yet, but come a good distance and coming down towards down there you can see where Banderas Bay is, with Puerto Vallarta in it, which has got the airport. and a very well-known tourist destination. But where we're going to, La Cruz, is more of a little Mexican village, much more Mexican and less touristy, which I like. The seas are still a good 3 meters, 10 feet. They're still throwing us around quite a bit. Every now and then a bigger one comes along. And interestingly, the pink, that lovely pink sky that we saw a moment ago, seems to have disappeared totally. All of a sudden it disappeared. And I'm still not yet seeing the sun, and it is now 6:36 in the morning. Oh, we have a hint of the sun coming up now. One result of the really rough seas that we were having was that the seas were constantly washing the decks, and the next day I suddenly realized there were lots of squid. In fact, later the day again, I kept finding squid everywhere. They were obviously trapped. They come on deck in the water and they get trapped on deck. While the seas are slowly dying down, but the sign of the rough conditions that we've come through was finding these squid on the back deck there, on the after deck. They're a sure sign of rough seas, because they come in as the seas wash the deck. They come in with it and they get trapped, as those two have. So yeah, a sure sign. And the wind is around 12-15 knots, I think. It's slowly dying down. The sky is looking quite nice with just a bit of light cloud. Almost nothing over the astern of us. And the bad news of the day, I think we seem to be continuing to have bad news on this passage, is that the apart from the little generator, that I put that on actually, and that worked for a little bit, and I had high hopes that it would keep going, but eventually it decided also that it had a temperature problem. It was overheating, so it switched off. And then we were slowing down anyway, and I thought, well, the batteries are getting low, I need to start the main engine and just run it gently, do a bit of motor sailing, because we'd slowed down sufficiently. We were down to under 6 knots most of the time, all the time, apart from when a wave catches us. As before, you know, we're still getting caught by a wave, and it's not exactly surfing, but it's a near thing. So that's the only time I see the boat speed go up. So at the moment we're doing around 5.7, 5.1, drops down. I'd say we're doing around 5 knots on average at the moment. And I turned on the main engine to help. And within a short while, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, the overheat alarm came on. Quite devastating, because I changed the impeller and it should have been fine. So now I'm pretty sure that maybe the water pump itself is just not functioning properly to turn the impeller. because it's the turning of the impeller that cools the engine, the seawater coming in. So yeah, so I'm not very feeling too happy at the moment, not at all happy in fact. And the sleep has been not too bad. I've had a couple of hours sleep on at regular intervals. There's really nothing around, and the AIS keeps a good watch anyway. As I already mentioned, it seemed to me that everywhere I looked when I went around on deck, I would find squid trapped in between lines and just about everywhere. Well, the good news is I've managed to get one of those jammers to release, so that I've been able to put out the mainsail, shoot it out, and it's still got a reef in at the moment, so I'm about to take that out, and then we'll be under full main and full genoa, making a little bit more better speed. I think we're getting up around over 5 knots now. I mean, the wind isn't very much. It's about 9, 10, maybe 12 knots. But at least we're making a better speed and we're sailing better. So feeling a little bit happier. We're still with a major battery problem, power problem. I've turned all the instruments off except for the AIS and the autopilot, which I'm about to switch off and then hand steer. I'll keep an eye on the battery situation. If I can keep the autopilot going, that would be better. It's an awful pity I haven't got my hydrovane in place to use, because of course that takes no battery power, and we're sailing beautifully and it would be keeping us underway beautifully. But I was hoping to get some copper coat on the rudder, and so the hydrovane isn't in place. Big shame. Anyway, this will do the job beautifully now. Way better than an autopilot that needs all that battery power. No battery power with the hydrovane. Brilliant, and it steers beautifully. Okay, so I'm about to let that last reef go. I'll check on the battery situation and possibly get some hand steering going. Oh, and by the way, the entire boat is coated in salt crystals because of the rough conditions we had yesterday and overnight. So when I get in, it'll need a really good wash down. Oh, and my cough is still going really well. Very tiring when you're having to cough all the time, but every now and then I have to get the gun drop. Well, we're under full canvas now. I've got the all reefs out, full genoa, so that's good, and on a preventer, well sheeted out, and we're making as best a speed as we can, which is about 5 to 5.5 knots, I suppose. I'm just looking at the speed now. I've got the AIS on display still, but I'm probably going to turn that off shortly and leave it off for a couple of hours at a time, and then put it on just to check around for any ships around, because most of them are not going any more than 20 knots, and I'll see them when they're 24 miles or more off anyway, so that will mean I can save power there. And the only other thing that's on is I've turned the VHF off even. I'll put that on again every now and then. And then the only thing that's on is the autopilot, which I think I'm going to have to turn off and just hand steer. I know what course I need to steer, obviously, and I'll just have to put it back on autopilot every now and then and hope that we can get some power into the system. I will actually try starting the motor again, because even if it's only for 5 or 10 minutes before it gives up and overheats, that would put something into the batteries. And likewise, in fact, actually I'm going to check the water filter just to make sure that it is full of water, which it should be, but I was looking at it just before and I wasn't sure that it was full of water. Anyway, that's something else to look at. Not much I can do about it, mind you, but I'm just trying to figure out why I'm having the problem. It does look very much like a water pump problem on the main engine, and and maybe an impeller that's gone on the little generator. But at the moment, well, I suppose I could perhaps have a look at that, but then if I'm hand steering, I can't be in two places at once. We'll see. We're sailing nicely. It's a beautiful afternoon. It's what time have we got now? Well, it's on the display actually. That's UTC, 23, just gone 2300. Yeah, take 7 off that. 16, yeah, just coming up to 4:15 in the afternoon is the local time here. And it's a really lovely afternoon. If I didn't have all these battery problems, I could really be enjoying it. But there we go, something else to deal with. Well, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, just subscribe, please do so, and you'll know when my next video gets posted. It takes a bit of time sometimes because you have to have good Wi-Fi for that, and that isn't happening most of the time. Thanks a lot. Well, I'm checking that seawater filter, having of course turned off the seacock, and it does look a little bit dirty, but it's not that bad. But I shall clean it. But the point is that there's no water in here. There should be water in here, and so clearly there's a problem. I say I don't think that this is that jammed up with guns that it's causing that problem. So that implies that the water pump is just not doing anything, and if the impeller's fine, because I just recently changed it yet again, it means that the water pump is not turning in the impeller. So anyway, I'll clean this and put it back, and then try starting the engine. Even just for 5 minutes, it'll give some power into the batteries, I'm thinking. So here we are with a nice clean seawater filter. I'm going to put that back, but I will top up the container that it goes into before I close up, to make sure that that the pump is primed. Again, I really don't think that this is the problem, but you never know, so it's worth trying. Anything is worth trying. Here's my cleaned water filter all back together again now, and you notice it's right by the exhaust, and at the heat exchanger end there's this halyard exhaust alert system, and that picks up any overheating early on. Doesn't have a very loud noise. In fact, I thought I was going to add a siren to the noise side of things here, but I have now become aware of the noise that it makes, and the signal on the little display in the cockpit. So it's doing a good job telling me that there is an overheating, and I don't think it's telling me a lie. Anyway, we'll try starting up again now and see what happens. Well, the water seems to be moving in the filter, and yeah, maybe it was that was the problem. So far so good, but it's early days yet. Just wait to see how long this lasts. I've just got it in neutral, and just running the engine to charge the batteries, and not using it to push the boat along at all. So yeah, keep our fingers crossed and hope it works. Well, the sun is getting low. There's not enough wind for the wind generator to turn, which implies that the apparent wind is 7 knots or less. But I am still hearing the motor, the engine, the main engine going without an overheat alarm so far, and that's a good 15 minutes or more, so that's really, I'm very, very happy about that. A little bit of cloud in the sky, not much, and the seas are definitely lying down. They were, occasionally there's one coming now, a bigger one comes by, but I'd say the seas are probably maybe 2 meters at most. They're certainly not the 3 meters they were. So here comes one, a bigger one now, and it's 1.5 to 2 meters, so 5 feet roughly. And we've got a little bird out there in the distance. There we go, flapping away. Anyway, so the good news is we've got full sail. I've let out the first reef as well, that all went fine, and of course with that jammer unjammed, we're now able to sheet out the main, so it's actually doing something usefully, and the generator is just about staying full most of the time. So yeah, things are definitely better. If this keeps on, if the engine keeps running without overheating, then clearly it was the water filter being a bit dirty, but possibly also because I didn't prime the water filter. You know, it was empty and I didn't put any water in it. So, you know, who's to say? Anyway, seems to have solved the problem, and I'm really happy about that. And I also decided that, well, I've just decided that it's about time I had some food. I've had one cup of coffee all day, and it's now well after 5 o'clock in the evening. So I think we might actually have some of my cooked meal. That's actually times like this when the power is low is when I'm really glad to have a foot pump at the galley, a seawater tap at the galley, a hand pumped seawater tap, and propane to cook on. You don't need to use electricity power to cook. So I'm pretty independent of power for those things at the moment. I've left all the instruments pretty well off. I'll put things on again when the power has come a bit further, up a bit more. For the moment it's really not, there's no problem with having everything off. The autopilot is going. As I said before, it's an awful pity I haven't got my hydrovane in place, because if I'd had that going I wouldn't have had all this problem, because it takes no power but keeps the boat on a really good course anyway. So there we go. I'm about to have I think a cup of tea and some food, and I might even have a little bit of wine to celebrate a positive outcome to today. Okay, bye for now. A sunset on another day, Friday, and got the sun setting. I have my food ready. I have a little bit of wine to celebrate the end of what has turned into a far more positive day than it started. I'm so very happy to have got the engine running. Well, I did have some wine, but no longer. So I'm very happy to have got the engine running without overheating, touch wood. And so we're charging the batteries, which are now 50% or close to. I'm about to have some food, and I'm going to have to top up my wine because it just spilled. I thought I had it carefully in the right place, but obviously not. And yeah, all is good with the world at the moment. So here goes the sun, just about to sink down into the sea there. Just watch it disappear. There's quite a bit of cloud there. But the seas have calmed down, the wind has calmed down. We're not using the engine at all to push the boat along. We're making in about 10 to 12 knots of wind from the stern. So we're on a run. But at least the main is full, the Genoa is full, and they're both pushing us along as they should be. So I'll have my food while it's hot. It does cool down quite a bit at night actually, so I'm about to put my layers back on again. But we'll just watch the sun disappear out of sight if I can keep the camera steady. Well, the problem is the boat's moving, of course. I can keep the camera steady on the boat, but the boat's moving. And it disappears, this large golden ball, orange, disappears out of sight until tomorrow. There we go. Bye, sun. Come back tomorrow. When I'm looking up at the masthead light, and around are stars everywhere, no moon, and we're gently sailing along. Now I'm looking ahead, and it is just so dark, and the stars are pretty bright. There's a little bit of haze, I think. They seemed to be a bit brighter half an hour or so back, and Orion was visible actually. He's just sunk down into the over the horizon, and it's just so gentle. It's beautifully peaceful. There's the sloshing of the water as we go by. We have our instruments showing us that the speed is a little bit over between 4 and 5 knots, which is not very fast, but that's fine. It's also showing us that the wind has come right down to about 6 knots, and we're in deep water. It's just so pleasant and gentle, peaceful, just beautiful. So I'll get back to my bunk for another hour or so sleep. AIS is on. Oh, I meant to mention that we're passing the Las Marias, 3 big islands, which one of them used to house a prison, and I'm hearing that that has now gone. Previously, you had to be careful not to get at all close to any of those islands, because people would regularly try to escape. And you could be in a lot of trouble if they thought you were trying to get someone to save them. Anyway, no longer, I hear. So we're on our way. We're less than 100 miles from Banderas Bay, and we should be there, I hope, before sunset tomorrow. Tomorrow being Saturday. Here's my chart table at night. Everything, we have a red light. It makes it much easier for visibility, for seeing things. It doesn't destroy your night vision. So when I go back outside, up on deck, I can still see everything. We have the plotter. We have the radio not in use below it. And my logbook is closed at the moment because I keep a paper log on a regular basis. Here we are, well after dawn, at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we can just see in the distance there, very hazy, probably not easy to spot the outline of one of the 3 Islas Marias. It used to be a prison island, or one of them was a prison island, and now I gather that's stopped, but just the last of the 3 Marias Islands, and not to be confused, by the way, with the Marietas, which are in the mouth of Banderas Bay that we'll be coming to shortly. We're 50 miles away from landfall. Well, I say landfall, we're 50 miles away from Punta de Mita, which is where I'm hoping to anchor overnight. We'll get there hopefully before sunset. And the seas, of course, have calmed down a lot, way smoother than they were. And if we come round here, you can see out to the Pacific. In fact, that's the direction east of the Pacific Ocean. So, yeah, it all seemed to be going well. Our only speed, I've had to increase the revs on the motor, because our apparent wind is almost exactly the wind that we're making by motoring at 5 or 6 knots. So we're actually making 5 knots at the moment. Okay, so I think it's time to go and get some coffee, get some breakfast. I've entered the log. I might center the main and the genoa a bit more, might even roll in the genoa if it's not doing anything. We'll see how that goes. So by sunset, I'm hoping that I'll be at anchor in Punta de Mita at the north entrance to Banderas Bay. So there we have the full main, and we'll get that in about 10 hours time. Well, I think we just gained another hour, another clock change, getting here towards Banderas Bay. The Zulu time is 19:30, which according to the time I've been keeping is 1:30 in the afternoon. And I think it's probably more like 12:30. Anyway, 7 off 19 gives me 12, so I think we must be 6 hours now. Anyway, we'll have to adjust that when I get in, for sure. So I just adjusted the lazy jacks to pull up the stack pack, ready for dropping the main. It's still got a couple of hours to go, but it's good to be ready in advance. No reason why not. So the stack pack, the laser jacks are tight on both sides now, ready for the sail to drop down into the cover. And I went forward also to get the anchor locker ready, the chain locker. And in doing that, oh my gosh, the number of squid that were all along the side deck here that I had to pick up. Good big sized squid. If I'd realised at the time, close enough to when it happened, I could have had a big plate of calamari. Anyway, they're all dried up and I threw them back in the water, so they're back to their home. Poor things. Anyway, we obviously went through a whole shoal of squid in the rough waters the other night. And what else to say? Yeah, we're just dawdling along. I've increased the engine revs. There's a little sailing boat out there, which is nice to see on the horizon. The sign of an apparent wind of 7 knots or under is always that the wind generator doesn't turn. It needs more power to turn. It's a very good generator, but it does need a little bit of wind to turn it around. So clearly our apparent wind is less than 7 knots. And looking forward, I've had to adjust our course slightly to avoid, I didn't realise, but looking at the in detail, there was a shadow patch just dead ahead of us. We were going to go straight through the middle of it. It's even got a marker on it, which is unusual for hereabouts. So I've adjusted our course to avoid that. We'll go down to the south of it and then we'll come back into Punta de Mita to anchor. I'm looking forward to anchoring and relaxing. Well, I'm very glad that I spotted our route was going straight through this item here, because it turns into a great big rock. I thought it was a marker buoy on some shallows, a reef or something, but in fact, look at it, it's a pretty big rock. You would not want to hit that. So I'm glad that we've changed our course to go around it well before getting anywhere near it. Well, we just made a sharp left turn around that rock, which was clearly marked, and the reason I wasn't familiar with it is that I've normally come in to the north of there. And if I just take us out a bit, because knowing the area a little bit, I was wondering why the Tres Marietas was shown so far over, and it turns out that where we were coming into, I was taking us south of this point here, which there's absolutely no need to, because the Marietas are here. And normally, as we are now, I'm coming in to the north of the Marietas. It's perfectly, there's plenty of water, and so I've just realised my mistake, and hence the sharp left turn, a sharp turn to port. Anyway, that will hopefully get us into the anchorage in daylight. We're making pretty good speed, 6.5 knots as you can see. Apparent wind is just under 10 knots. Most of that is our motoring speed. And the depth, 370 feet, plenty deep enough. So that's the sudden change of course for today. I'm interested that the maps, the charts are not showing well enough the shallow area around Punta de Mita, where I'm going into the anchorage. I mean, it's well marked. There's a buoy that you keep outside of, showing you where the shallows and the rocks and the reef are. So yeah, I don't quite understand why the charts are not showing more detail there. Anyway, at least I've realised my mistake in good time, so we'll get there before sunset, hopefully, keeping up this speed of 6 point something knots. Okay, we've got full main, full genoa, dead upwind into the apparent wind, so we're making as much speed as we can. Well, that's what we just avoided, the Rocca Corbetena, Not something I normally come across, because coming down from San Jose directly to Punta de Mita means I'm well north of there. So that explains my lack of knowledge about that rock. Anyway, all's well that ends well. We avoided it, and now we're heading directly to Punta de Mita, to the anchorage. Well, I've been looking out for Cabo Corrientes on the south end of the bay, and it's so hazy. I can see it, but I'm not sure it shows up on the photo, on the video. But there it is, Cabo Corrientes, renowned for good strong wind around it, like most capes. And yeah, just visible. Well, there we have the Tres Marietas at the entrance to Banderas Bay, Bahia de Banderas. So good to see them. A very good snorkeling area. A lot of tourist boats go and spend the day there, take people there to snorkel around. It's a protected area. And we're on our way to Punta de Mita. Not too far to go now. I'm still hoping for being able to anchor in daylight. I do not like trying to anchor somewhere in the night. And I suspect actually that the anchorage is going to be pretty busy, because the marina is full. Most of the marinas are pretty busy now. They've got so many people wanting to stop there. So I suspect that some of the overflow will be in the Punta de Mita anchorage that I'm heading to. Keep my fingers crossed on that one, that I can find somewhere to put the anchor down. Landfall ahoy! There's Punta de Mita, and the town around the corner is Sayulita, much beloved of surfers. And yeah, we're coming in fairly fast because we're trying to get in before the light goes, but we're going to have to take all our sails down, of course, the mainsail and the genoa. So I've got to sort that out before I go to the anchorage itself. So here we see the Tres Marietas off to starboard as we come in towards the Punta de Mita anchorage. Cabo Corrientes is a bit clearer now, I think. A bit more visible, a little bit hazy, but the cape is still there. And I've had to change course quite a bit to avoid the reef shallows. The chart I've got does not show any detail of depth around the reef at the south end of Punta de Mita. And so I've had to veer away quite a lot, actually, to stay in deep water. And the deep water actually got all the way down to 30 feet. Anyway, we're fine now. We've got 55 feet. I'm slowly coming around in towards the anchorage. I've been talking to Kayleen and Tyler on Footloose. They're already there. So we're hoping to meet up this evening. Haven't seen them since Canada, since Canoe Cove. Okay, so still got 54 feet depth, which is good, and I think I'll start curling around a little bit more soon. I reckon we're close enough now for me to start furling in the Genoa, and then a little bit later I'll drop the main. So we'll get on with that now. I'm busy tidying a few lines, and I've got to tie the boom in place because otherwise it'll flop all night long. And the view from here is of the Punta de Mita anchorage. We're lying happily to the anchor in under 10 meters, 27 feet depth. The sun is getting low, but not yet setting. So I think the timing was pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. We have, as I said earlier, we have gained an hour. So what should have been 5:30 is more like 6:30, but that's fine. And I think it's time to celebrate with a glass of wine and maybe some food. That would be good. Cabo Corrientes, out to the Tres Marietas, and a big power yacht there, motor yacht. to the sun about to set over the point of Punta de Mita. Beautiful. Perfect timing. Food is ready, my wine is about to be had, and we shall really, really enjoy the evening. Rocking very gently, a very slight swell, but not much. I'm just going to grab my glass of wine and come back to the sunset. Catching the sun as it disappears over the land there. Goodbye sun, come back another day. Rocking gently. Night all.